Item number 3 is to discuss an issue that is before the Board of Supervisors at tomorrow's meeting. As you can see in the supporting documents, the Probation Department has asked the board to lift the hiring freeze that has been in place, keeping probation from filing vacancies since 2021. We have heard a number of presentations here at the BSCC meetings, at the board meetings, and elsewhere about, about the staffing crisis and the resulting issues at the halls in particular. We have witnessed ourselves issues with getting students to class and heard about what canceled family visits, delayed attorney visits, limited therapy visits, limited outdoor recreation time, and most certainly increased violence in the halls, causing injuries to youth and staff. In the board letter attached to this agenda and before the board tomorrow, probation states the following concerned statistics. The juvenile halls have 108 budgeted youth supervision positions. Of those 108 positions, currently only 180, which is 22%, youth supervision staff are fully available to work. The remaining 627, which is 78%, are either vacant, unavailable for work, or have temporary work restrictions that do not allow them to supervise detained youth. In probation's words, this depleted staffing pool is unintended for effective supervision and programming for youth. In August of this year, the department received authorization from the Chief Executive Office to CEO to hire 150 staff to address staffing shortage. However, they now have asked the board for a full removal of the hiring freeze. Here to discuss this issue are, I suppose it's going to be Nicole Brown, Wendy, of course, and Chief, I'm not sure if you'll be discussing with this or not. But Nicole Brown, if you're, or Chief, if you wanted to start off this, your comments, please feel free. And then after you, we can hear from Nicole Brown from Urban Peace Institute, and then Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Carrillo, for the opportunity. Yeah, the hiring freeze refers to juvenile institutions, which is the juvenile halls, for example, but it impacts all the other operations of the department. For example, when we promote someone from a DSO to a DPO, Deputy Probation Officer, to go work the camps, they come from the institutions. When we promote someone from a DPO 1 to a DPO 2 to go in the field, they come from the camps. We typically don't hire staff from the outside for the positions in the field. They go through a process. But by not hiring in the institutions, it impacts everywhere else, including the adult side of the house, because from DPO 2, they serve both the adults and juveniles. The request for the hiring freeze is to be able to hire also clerical staff, because this hiring freeze includes everybody, not just sworn staff, but also a clerical support staff that can do some of the work that's being done by DSOs or anyone else that should be doing other type of work. And a professional staff should be doing some of the clerical work to free up some of the officers to do their work. That's kind of like the concept of, overall, because it impacts also morale and if there's no promotions, then people become stagnant. And what we want to do is bring in people who come in with a different mindset. When we're talking about changing the environment, the culture, we got to start with when you recruit, when you hire, and when you train. And that continues throughout the organization. And it's not just in juvenile halls, but the entire department. I don't want it to stop and work in silos like only juvenile hall does this. It should be everyone. I don't care if you're working adults or juveniles. We should be treating all of our young people as the children or youth of our county. Don't label them. Don't call them names. Like I said earlier, I hate the word, worse of the words. You label somebody, then you're going to end up with what you're going to end up with. I was told once when I was a police officer that I wasn't going to amount too much because I have a Spanish accent. I said, I was born in Tijuana. English is my second language. What do you expect? But I was treated like that, so I had to work extra hard. So I know firsthand what it's like when somebody labels you, calls you names, or the fact that I have brown eyes and I can get promoted to be a police chief because I have brown eyes. And to me, again, those verbal words are very painful, very hurting. So we got to change the way we interact. So to me, being able to hire different individuals to come in from our community, reflect our community to do a better job in caring for our clients, and I call them clients, throughout the process, not just in juvenile hall, but even in the community. And I think that's the main reason for the lifting of the hiring freeze, so that we can be able to hire ongoing. Yeah, I can go back to the CEO's office and ask for a waiver, and we've got to go through a process to get the waiver approved. But in the meantime, we could be losing some viable candidates to other places as opposed to bringing them here to Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County is a great place for work. It's a great people in here, and we really can lead the transformation for the entire nation with everything that we're trying to do here. But if we do it in a very systematic, thoughtful manner, we can accomplish that. So to me, lifting the hiring freeze is more than just juvenile institutions; it's the entire department, and we can work together to accomplish that. Like I said earlier, I've been meeting with Mr. DYD. His name escapes me. I just mentioned his name earlier. To see what can we do together. DYD is part of what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to make things a lot better for our community, for our young people, and for everyone as a whole. So that's the main reason that we were thinking about that lifting the hiring freeze. If we're unable to lift the hiring freeze, as I say, it gets voted down tomorrow, then we have to make extra efforts that when we bring new staff to be able to get permission from the CEO's office to get the people hired so we can promote, get people through the process so they can have an opportunity for growth, for advancement, and actually make it a career, not a job. To me, if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we have Nicole Brown. If you're here, floor is yours.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
I sure can. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm joining from phone. I was having trouble joining with WebEx, but so I do have a presentation. And so maybe if you can let me know if y'all see that presentation, the first slide, and then I'll just verbally say when to change slides, if that's okay.
Okay, I see the first slide.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much to the Probation Oversight Commission for giving me the time to speak. My name is Nicole Brown. I'm the policy manager at the Urban Peace Institute and also a coordinating member of the Los Angeles Youth Uprising Coalition. And I was able to present to you a while back on probation's budget. And as these issues are intimately tied together, I'm grateful for the opportunity to kind of share back some information, some of which it's material that I've already shared with you, but I think it's important for both commissioners as well as the public to understand the holistic picture and understand why we are opposed to lifting the hiring freeze at this time. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot, just reminding about probation's budget as a whole, which is over $1 billion last year with 5,568 budgeted positions. And if we can go to the next slide, slide number 3 with the pie chart. These are all the different budget units that make up the entire probation department. And the hiring freeze, as Chief Gonzales pointed out, is on juvenile institutions, which is, as you can see, a very large percentage of the probation's budget and probation's as a whole. So I just thought it was important to show that. So now, this slide really talks about juvenile operations as a whole. And I agree with the chief that while the hiring freeze is only on juvenile institutions, I think it's very important to look at the entirety of juvenile operations. The changes that have happened in youth justice over the last 10 years and you know, and I think that some of these just points that I think are important to point out is the whole reason why the hiring freeze was placed in the first place. And as Chief Gonzales pointed out, a hiring freeze does not mean that they cannot hire ever, but what it means is that there needs to be special justification and permission by the CEO's office in order to move forward with that hiring. So I just think, so the juvenile operations, all of the different units, these are 3 different units that cover, I guess, the supervision or detention and the staffing of the supervision and or detention facilities for youth. There's the juvenile institutions, which has a budget of over $400 million a year. And this is what runs the camps and halls. And then you have special services and field services, which tend to, which are more over supervising types of roles. it's also important to note that the probation support services is the administrative part, and that's a completely separate budget unit. That budget unit is over $170 million each year, and there is no hiring for us on that unit. So juvenile operations represents about $570 million. There were, at least last year when we had the data, 414 vacant positions. I think it's important to note that these positions have been vacant for many years. And so this is not a new issue. Vacant positions are not anything new, as the commissioners know. So moving on to the next slide, I think some important things to point out is that 80% of the juvenile institution services budget unit, it goes to salaries and benefits. And in 2009, 2010, there were 3 juvenile halls and 18 camps. And last year, there were 2 juvenile halls and 5 camps. So you've seen 14 facilities be closed down. And at the same time, and we have record low numbers of youth to this day, even though the juvenile hall population has gone up. Switching to the next slide, we see that from 2009 to 2021, the average daily population in the camps and halls has decreased by 86%. But the number of budgeted positions has only decreased by 22%. And so, I'll be honest, for me, it's quite difficult to understand how there's not enough staffing. And moving to the next slide, you can also see, and I only had numbers for this number of years, that youth on supervision have also declined by 55% in the last few years. 4 years here that we have data for. So if you look, last year, there were 332 positions filled in the juvenile field services and only about 2,200 youth on active supervision. So looking at those numbers of field services, that's only a ratio of about 6.8 youth per DPO out in the field. And so I raise this because when you look at the closure of all of these camps, and you look at the huge decline of youth on supervision, I think it's important to look at juvenile operations as a whole and not just juvenile institutions and ask, what are these staff doing in the camps? I know some have been deployed. Why do we still have so many officers working in the field when we've seen such a huge decline in youth on supervision? And so if we could go to the next slide, as you all know very well, it seems that the issue is not necessarily that there are not enough people on staff. Juvenile operations has over 2,000 people on staff, but the staff are not coming to work. So in the board memo justifying the hiring freeze, it said that 32% of staff are on leave. I thought it was important looking at that next bullet point down, which I also presented out of an auditor controller report a while back. This is not a new issue. In fiscal year 2019-2020, 20% of the juvenile institution services staff were on leave for over 6 months. And now we see 32%. Years later, 32% of the juvenile hall staff are on leave. So knowing that the juvenile institution services salaries and benefits are $319 million a year, I do not know what the total is of the number of staff in juvenile institutions on leave. But if it is 32%, that is the equivalent of about $100 million per year just being paid for staff leave. And that was also reported that about 47% of staff are calling out on any given day. And in the board letter, it notes that 30 to 50 juvenile hall staff are calling out on a given day. And so, so the issue is not necessarily that there aren't enough positions. And I think it's important to think about all of the positions that are there and available. And I guess as a person that myself has worked in restaurants for many years, if you can't get your staff to show up and you had 6 restaurants and a bunch of extra staff, you would just make sure that the staff that you have that aren't doing anything come over and work in what needs to be done, and figure out a management issue, not necessarily hire more people so you can pay more salaries and more people to be on staff, without the guarantee that this isn't just going to be hiring more people who are just not going to go to work. So I think the last important piece, there's three more important points if we can go to the next slide. One, that has been noted that the CEO has approved the hiring of 150 people for the juvenile halls. And so this would be in addition to that. If you look over on the right, I think a very important point is that the CEO's office has been working for many, many months on a report looking at what is the quote right size for staff, both in the halls and on supervision. And the lifting of the hiring freeze is going to have years and years and years of implications for what it means for the county, what it means for the department, what it means for Youth Justice Reimagined. And if the board were to take this and they ask the CEO to do this analysis, they haven't even finished their analysis. And so it feels like they are working on, they would be working on inadequate information to be able to make these decisions. And the last thing is that while I appreciate Supervisor Mitchell's read-in motion to gather more information about how lifting this hiring freeze aligns or does not align with Youth Justice Reimagined, I just want to note that Youth Justice Reimagined really relies on staff attrition. And looking at, so I think we need to look at how can we use these thousands of staff that are on staff and be more flexible. And I also think that there are other solutions, some of which have been talked about. How can we work on step downs? How can we decarcerate, continue to get young people out of the halls to decrease the population, particularly with urgency around cisgender girls and gender expansive youth, considering the decades of abuse that have gone on there? How can we hire other folks in tandem with the Department of Youth Development, like credible messengers? And then how can we make a plan, actually make a plan, if we are committed to Youth Justice Reimagined, to make the staffing more flexible so that the staff that is on the books really can be used and deployed in a way that is meeting the needs, so that we aren't hearing about this crisis that has been caused inside the juvenile halls. So I just wanted to present some of those numbers, and I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wendy, you're up.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Carrillo. I'll be very fast. I just wanted to explain the attachments on the agenda today and how they relate to the presentations. So you'll see a copy of the board letter that goes through a lot of the comments that Chief Gonzales brought up, as well as the recent report back from the Probation Department about their collaboration with Vincent Holmes, interim director of DYD, and the Department of Human Resources about the hiring practices for these new positions, 150 positions that are approved, as well as potentially future positions. And my response to that report, which is what the read-in motion requested, those indicate that there was a deep level of collaboration and that probation has put together a listed plan for recruitment, hiring, interviewing that all includes principles of Youth Justice Reimagined and Care First, Jails Last. Also, we have attached Nicole's presentation. That was a late attachment if you looked at the attachments earlier, but it is there now. And finally, attached the 56-hour work week report, which is why I wanted to explain why we did that today. Commissioner Dupuy actually brought it up in her comments that there are some recommendations in that report that relate to the overall staffing and diversification of staffing that may be not directly related to the 56, but more related to the LA model. And also because there are some ongoing questions related to our first item on the agenda today about Kilpatrick's capacity in terms of staff sleeping quarters. So some of you may remember we worked on a document earlier this year that was a specific list of information about Kilpatrick's capacity. We're working on updating that document and just waiting for final approval to make sure our statistics are correct. But there are a lot of things attached to this agenda item today that I hope you'll take a look at. And that's all I have to share.
That was a lot, Wendy. Thank you so much. Great information. Commissioners, do you have questions for our panelists of either of the agenda items? And also, let me just remind you that if you wish to propose any actions related to either item, we will do that after public comments. Okay, I'm looking over some raised hands. Don't see any. Nicole, if you're still with us, are you there? Or here, there? You see her on, she should be here, right, Wendy?
It does look like she's
Hello?
still here. Yes, she's here. Mhm.
Yeah, I think we were dueling, I was trying to unmute myself, and then, yeah, it was bad, but I'm still here.
Nicole, let me ask you a question. You know, we're talking about these very large numbers, but can you give me an average of what a salary for for someone who's not showing up? Like, what is someone getting paid who has just decided to, for whatever reason, not come to work?
Sure, if you give me 1 second, based on so I can buy some time and say the numbers that I shared with you about juvenile operations came from a report back motion on Youth Justice Reimagined last July. And I think I did look up for the juvenile institutions. You can, I believe it's about, okay, average salary and benefit for juvenile institutions, looking at the number of positions filled like that they gave, it's, and versus like just like whole numbers divided by number of positions, it was 189,063 for the full juvenile institutions. And then 157,000 for salaries and benefits for field services and 173,000 for special services.
So someone is getting some, I mean, these are big numbers for folks who you know, who are, you know, supposed to come to work, and this is not some chump change that you know, a lot of people wish they had these type of salaries. Is this included with benefits as well, or this is just like a
That is included with benefits.
regardless, these are great salaries that are I don't know, I guess for those who are you know, thinking about and just wait a minute before I go any further, or make a side comment on this. So just to be clear, so staff who are not coming to work, are they still getting paid?
That is my understanding.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments on these items that we've brought up? Commissioner Canales?
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Commissioner Carrillo. That was a excellent question, and that has been one of my concerns with lifting the hiring freeze. If we already have almost 50% of staff off with full pay and full benefits, how is it a solution to just hire more? And until we get to the real problem there, you know, that staff are already on pay, they're already on benefits. We just can't get them to come to work because of the laws that protect them. You know, I think that to just lift the hiring freeze is just like, you know, I don't want to be cliche, but, you know, just the whole definition of some insanity. And that is why I keep raising the issue and opposing lifting the hiring freeze. Thank you so much. It's just a comment.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And Chief, for your team, you know, just to be fair, and I know Nicole is referencing reports that I know she stands by, and I'm not questioning her numbers here, but is there a number that probation can also offer in relations to average salaries for probation? And if maybe not on the spot, but if you can provide that either now or in the future, we would really appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. Yes, we can break it down by individual because we're talking about different classifications with night group supervisor compared to detention service officer. You're talking about different requirements and all the benefits that go into the employee salary. So the capacity, so basically call that full loaded employee. So you can take a look at that. And I know Chief Fletcher had her hand up. I don't know if she still has a comment.
Right, just for clarity, so our staff, any employee in the county, right, is earning vacation and sick leave. And so when somebody is off work, they are using their time. So that can burn through their leave banks, which they are entitled to and which they are earning by working. But also there's the FMLA issue. And I know we've talked about that before, where individuals can apply to have protection under FMLA while they're still really burning their leave banks. They are entitled to 12 weeks per year. And then state law for peace officers, if they are injured on the job, are entitled to 1 year off to address those injuries. So all of the leaves are supported by medical notes. As you know, our staff, even when they're out for 1 day from our juvenile halls, are required to submit a doctor's note. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that folks do have to use their leave balances when they're not working.
Fletcher, that's a great point.
And if it's,
Go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Nicole, go ahead.
No, I wanted to just share, because like I said, but just so people, I just wanted to share where the numbers that I'm looking at, just so that it's just clear. Because like it is just a back of the envelope calculation. So looking at, I just was able, I pulled up my spreadsheet and I wanted to work backwards. So if you look at so the juvenile institution services last year had an adopted budget of $318 million and 193,000, and that was associated with 1,683 positions. So even if you look at that section, just the salaries and benefits is $314,941,000 for salaries and benefits in juvenile institutions. So if you just divide that number by the number of associated positions, which is just over 1,600, that gets you 187,131. So they're just whole numbers, but it's like, that's just the information that it's available to me, but I just wanted to share where those numbers came from, so it was clear for the Oversight Commission.
Thank you, Nicole. And Ms. Fletcher, just for clarification, because you're making it, I'm taking it as if you're there's a blanket defense here for the staff who are not showing up, and it leads me to a memory that I have about staff being safety checks and asked to come back to work. So is it everyone that's out has an excused absence, or are there some people who should be coming back to work but are not?
So we do require, if somebody calls out sick, we do require that even 1 day out sick, that you produce a doctor's note. So, it's a combination of things, right? People who have gone out on injury, who are out for an extended period of time, somebody who's out for a day or a couple of days. We have people who are out on vacation as well, right? Which is separate, which contributes to our staffing levels. So folks get their vacations denied to make sure that we can meet our staffing levels. But a doctor's note is required for anyone in our 2 juvenile halls who calls in sick, even for 1 day.
Commissioner Lewis, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. Just wanted to point out too that this is not necessarily a probation policy. This is a county policy, as it's been explained to me. And so in terms of how or why this continues to happen, it's not just probation. These are county policies. Then maybe the solution is seeking some type of instruction from either the CEO or the Board of Supervisors.